Zuhayr's hands were stained with blood, dry earth packed beneath his fingernails. He was breathless. Hours had passed as he dug at the base of the withered date palm, his back scorched by the sun, drenched in sweat. Suddenly, his fingers struck hard wood. His heart began to pound as if it would leap from his chest. As he clawed away the soil, an ancient, musty, intricately carved small chest emerged into the light. He lifted the chest from the pit and placed it upon his knees. As he slowly pried open the lid, a dazzling golden shimmer struck his face. The chest was filled to the brim with gold coins. He had never seen such wealth, even in his wildest dreams. For a moment, his breath caught. The dark days of hunger and destitution flashed before his eyes like a film reel. He was rich now. He would never be beholden to anyone again. But in the corner of the chest, tucked among the gold, an old leather pouch caught his eye. With trembling hands, he took the pouch and pulled out the yellowed parchment within. On the paper, in elegant script, it read, "This property belongs to Salim bin Abdurrahman. I left it here for safekeeping in a time of calamity. This is the inheritance of my only daughter, Jamila. Let whoever finds this treasure know that it belongs to her. Whoever delivers it to her shall have fulfilled their trust." As Zuhayr read these lines, he felt the blood drain from his veins. The luster of the gold vanished instantly before his eyes. The name Jamila echoed in his mind. This could be no coincidence. This was none other than the orphaned and impoverished Jamila from his own village, raised by an old woman, her eyes always bearing the profound sorrow of a lonely child. At that moment, the greatest and most grueling trial of Zuhayr's life began. He could take this gold to distant lands and build a life fit for a king. No one would ever know his secret. But his conscience and his loyalty to the trust would never let him go. To understand how this heavy secret and great trial began, we must turn back the clock to that desperate day when Zuhayr, bent double by poverty, set out on the dusty roads of the village to sell the only inheritance left by his father, an old sheep.
Zuhayr lived in a small, impoverished village where the mud brick houses cracked under the sweltering heat and the wind carried nothing but dust. He had lost his father at a very young age, and his mother had passed away years before that. In this vast world, he was a young man utterly alone and forsaken. The only inheritance left to him by his father was a frail, aging sheep that bleated in the courtyard of that ramshackle mud brick house. For years, Zuhayr had clung to life on the milk of that sheep. Every morning, his first task upon waking was to go to his sheep and feed it with his own hands. But time was merciless. As the years passed, the sheep grew old, and its milk dwindled drop by drop. Eventually, it dried up completely. Zuhayr's days began to be consumed by hunger and misery. He had not a bowl of water to boil, nor a handful of flour to add to it. At night, the gnawing hunger in his stomach made sleep impossible. One morning, he looked into the mirror at his own sunken face and withered frame. He then stepped out into the courtyard and stroked the head of his old sheep. Trying to hide the tears streaming down his face, he spoke softly to himself. "You are a legacy from my father. You sustained me for years, but now you have no milk left, and I have no fodder to give you. At this rate, we shall both perish from hunger. I have no choice left but to sell you. If I can find a buyer, perhaps I can buy a little flour with the pittance I receive and survive a while longer," he said. He tied an old rope around the sheep's neck and with his head bowed, set out. With heavy, sorrowful steps, he began the journey toward the market in the large town beyond the village.
The town's bazaar was as bustling as ever, a cacophony of vendors' cries, the clatter of horse-drawn carriages, and the mingling scents of spices. Amidst this throng, Zuhayr felt so small, so helpless, that he retreated to a corner to wait with his sheep. Passers-by did not even spare a glance at the animal, seeing only its aged and frail frame. Hours passed as the sun reached its scorching zenith, and Zuhayr's hopes began to wither. Just then, an old man with a face reflecting profound kindness emerged from the crowd. He wore worn but clean clothes. Approaching Zuhayr, he smiled with compassion and asked if he wished to sell the sheep. Zuhayr, lowering his head in shame, replied that he was selling it only out of necessity. The old man gazed at the gaunt sheep for a long moment.
Turning to Zuhayr, he explained that he had no money, not a single penny in his pocket. However, in a distant land, he had a tiny grandson, orphaned and on the brink of starvation. He needed an animal to provide milk, to keep the child alive. If Zuhayr would give him the sheep, he offered something of immense value in return. Reaching into his chest, the old man pulled a yellowed, ancient piece of paper from his garment. "This is a map, my son, an ancient map. It reveals the location of a great treasure in a city abandoned centuries ago. I am old, my knees no longer have the strength to cross those deserts. Reaching this treasure is impossible for me. But you are young, you are strong. If you give me this sheep to save the life of that innocent child, I shall give you this map. If the map proves true, you will become the wealthiest man in the world. But if it does not, know that you will have earned the greatest reward in the eyes of God."
Zuhayr was stunned by this proposal. To give away his only possession, a sheep that might have bought him enough flour to last weeks, in exchange for an uncertain, weathered scrap of paper, seemed like utter madness. An inner voice urged him not to trust this man, warning that he was being deceived. He pondered what he would do if the map were a forgery, or if he were to perish from thirst in the heart of the desert. But then, he looked into the old man's eyes, filled with compassion and plea, and envisioned the tiny infant crying from hunger. Zuhayr's heart was pure. His mercy always outweighed his logic, and for a moment, he forgot his own hunger. Turning to the old man, he said he was but a poor youth with nothing but this sheep, yet he could not abandon that needy child to death. He prayed that if the man spoke the truth, God would turn this deed into a blessing for him, and so he accepted the offer. The old man was overcome with tears of joy, grasping Zuhayr's hands and offering prayers. Yet Zuhayr wished to ensure the matter was settled. He was an honest and honorable young man. "Uncle," he said, "let there be no doubt in our hearts, lest anyone say in the future that one wronged the other. Let us go to the scribe on the corner and record this exchange before witnesses." The old man accepted this with pleasure. They went to the elderly scribe sitting at the corner of the bazaar, who drafted documents for the people. Zuhayr summoned 2 trustworthy merchants from the area to serve as witnesses. The scribe wrote at length, recording that Zuhayr sold his aging sheep in exchange for the old map in the man's hand, and that both parties were satisfied with this transaction of their own free will. The witnesses ratified the document. Zuhayr pressed the small seal inherited from his father onto the paper. The trade was complete. The old man took the sheep's rope with affection, placed his hand on Zuhayr's shoulder, and said, "My son, may God clear your path. God willing, a great blessing awaits you beyond those deserts. Even if you find nothing, know that today a child did not go hungry. This is our greatest reward," he said, before vanishing into the crowd and disappearing from sight.
Zuhayr stood alone in the heart of the bazaar with that yellowed map in his hand, feeling as though the entire weight of the world had settled upon his shoulders. Returning home to his humble room, he spread the map across the table by the flickering light of a candle. It was covered in inscriptions in an ancient tongue, strange symbols, sketches of sand dunes, ruined walls, and the illustration of an old date palm within a vast courtyard. The dots marking the paces and the signs indicating directions were immensely complex. Zuhayr did not sleep until dawn that night. He examined the map over and over, praying at length, "My Lord, if there is goodness in this for me, make these paths easy. If there is evil in this journey, keep me away from it. You are the one who knows my hunger, my desperation, and my intentions best." When the first light of morning illuminated the horizon, his mind was made up. There was no turning back. If his sustenance lay beyond those deserts, he would go and seek it. Taking with him a small earthenware water jug, a few pieces of dried bread, and a thick shawl, he locked his door tightly and set out from his village, from the lands where he was born and raised, toward an adventure of unknown end.
The first day of the journey was charged with excitement. His pace was brisk as he followed the path laid out on the map.
Yet, as noon approached and the sun reached its zenith, the desert began to reveal its merciless, scorching face. The sands beneath his feet burned like glowing embers, while the searing air made every breath a struggle. Seeking refuge in the shadow of a small rock, he took a sip of water and forced down a piece of dry bread. By night, the desert shed the heat of the day, replaced by a cold that cut like a blade. Curled upon the sand, he watched the stars and waited for the dawn. As the second day gave way to the third, fatigue and hunger pushed Zuhayr to the brink of exhaustion. Only a few drops remained at the bottom of the waterskin. His lips were parched, cracked, and bleeding from dehydration. His feet faltered with every step, but just as despair began to take hold, he spotted a small caravan in the distance. Summoning his remaining strength, he stumbled toward them. The men of the caravan, moved by pity, offered him water. Zuhayr told them of the search for an ancient ruin and that the path led deeper into those desolate lands. The men exchanged looks of sheer horror. One of them asked if he had lost his mind. "Those are cursed lands," he said. "No one who ventures there ever returns. There is plague in those deserts. There is death. Turn back with us while the way is still open." For a fleeting moment, fear gripped the heart of Zuhayr, but then he touched the map tucked against his chest. "If God has ordained this providence for me, he shall protect me from that curse. If the end of my life is destined to be there, then there is no escape regardless," he said, leaving the caravan behind to continue the journey. On the afternoon of the third day, a dark crimson cloud appeared on the horizon, and the wind suddenly surged with violence. The fine desert sands rose into the air, completely blotting out the sky. A terrifying sandstorm bore down on Zuhayr like a colossal wave. Zuhayr wrapped his shawl tightly around his face to shield his eyes as the storm dragged him across the ground, making breath nearly impossible. With a final, desperate effort, he used his hands to dig a deep trench in the sand. Burying half of his body within it, he fought to keep the storm from sweeping him away. For hours, he remained trapped in that darkness and roaring wind, as sand choked his throat and filled his ears. He repeated to himself, "If God keeps me alive, there must be a great secret waiting at the end of this journey."
When the storm finally subsided, Zuhayr slowly rose from beneath the sands like a man resurrected from the dead, shaking the dust from his clothes. Looking around, he saw that the storm had shifted every single dune. Finding his way was daunting, but he drew his map and recalibrated his course by the sun. On the morning of the fourth day, he noticed strange dark silhouettes on the horizon. Thinking it was a mirage, he rubbed his parched eyes and looked again. As he drew closer, those silhouettes revealed themselves as ancient crumbling ramparts, massive withered tree trunks, and monolithic stone gates. He had finally reached the lost city to which the map had led him. As he stepped through the city gates, he felt that this was a realm of the dead, abandoned centuries ago. The doors of the houses had rotted, the streets were choked with sand, and the columns of palaces had tilted. There was not a single living soul, not even the sound of a single bird. Zuhayr's heart pounded with a mixture of exhilaration and dread. He took the map in his hands, tracing the lines with his eyes as he moved forward. The map guided him through those dilapidated streets, leading him to the vast courtyard of an ancient palace. In the very center of the courtyard, its branches drooping but its trunk still standing tall, he saw that ancient date palm. Everything was exactly as the map depicted. Zuhayr's hands trembled with excitement as he reached the base of the tree, and at this very spot, the gold emerging from the earth he dug with his bare hands stood before him as the greatest trial of his life.
Zuhayr spent that night amidst those ruins by the chest of gold, weeping and praying. The dark desires within him, the agony of poverty brought by the years, were compelling him to take the gold and flee, to live as the wealthiest man in the world without telling a soul. But the name he had read on the parchment, the name Jamila, burned his conscience like a glowing ember. He knew how that girl lived in the village, head bowed like an outcast. He knew the sorrow of orphanhood in her eyes. By dawn, he had already made his decision. He had completely uprooted those dark desires, those diabolical whispers from his heart. He would deliver this trust to its owner, to the innocent Jamila, whatever the cost. With the first light of morning, he hoisted that heavy chest onto his back. The hunger and thirst he had endured on his way there did not affect him now. despite the heavy burden on his back. For his heart was as light as a bird, his soul was pure. The return journey was arduous once again, but in Zuhayr's eyes, those deserts now appeared like the gardens of paradise. After a grueling return journey lasting days, his clothes in tatters, his face covered in dust and grime, but with that heavy chest upon his shoulder, he reached the borders of his own village. He did not go directly to his own home. He directed his steps toward the house of the village's venerable and wise elder, the old sheikh, to whom everyone turned for counsel.
Upon reaching the village square, he found the sheikh and the other elders seated in the shade of the venerable plane tree. Zuhayr approached them with legs trembling from exhaustion, offered his greetings, and sat upon the ground. The sheikh was struck by Zuhayr's state, seeing him so weary yet so resolute. Zuhayr took a deep breath and asked, "O sheikh, elders of the village, tell me the truth. What is the true origin of Jamila, who lives in our village and was raised by that old woman? Where did she come from, and who were her mother and father?" The sheikh let out a deep sigh at this question, his mind drifting back to those distant years. "It was many, many years ago, Zuhayr," he said. "On the edge of the desert, as we were traveling with our caravan after a sandstorm, we came upon a sight. A man and a woman lay dead on the ground from thirst. Both had lost their lives. But in the woman's arms, held in a tight embrace, was a tiny baby girl, still breathing. The man had an old tattoo on his arm that read Salim. We took that baby. We brought her to our village, and that compassionate old woman, who had no children, adopted her. We named her Jamila. She has no one else," he said, "other than her parents who died in that desert."
Zuhayr could not hold back his tears upon hearing these words. Everything aligned perfectly with what was written on that parchment, and he no longer harbored the slightest doubt of its truth. He immediately lowered the heavy chest from his back and opened the lid. As the radiance of the gold struck the faces of the elders sitting in the village square, they were all frozen in awe. Zuhayr handed the leather case and the letter to the sheikh. "I found these gold coins among the ruins in the desert, but this letter states that this treasure belongs to Jamila, daughter of Salim. I could not keep this for myself. I have returned to deliver this trust to its rightful owner," he said. The sheikh and everyone present were left speechless by Zuhayr's inconceivable honesty and his profound sense of morality. The sheikh rose to his feet and kissed Zuhayr's dusty forehead with deep reverence. "Today, my son, you have shown us all the true meaning of humanity," he said. Together, they walked toward the house where the old woman, Jamila, lived. The old woman opened the door, astonished to see the crowd and the chest in Zuhayr's hands. Zuhayr asked, "May I see Jamila? I have brought her a trust left by her father." Jamila approached the door with her delicate, silent grace. Zuhayr placed the chest at her feet and handed her the letter. "This is your father's legacy, Jamila. You are not alone. Your father never forgot you. It was my solemn duty to deliver this to you," he said.
When Jamila read the letter, she collapsed where she stood. Not for the gold, but clutching that piece of paper bearing her father's name, she began to weep bitterly. "I always thought of myself as a rootless branch, yet it turns out such a love stood behind me," she prayed. The elderly woman sought to kiss Zuhayr's hands, calling him an angel. When the villagers gathered in the square heard of this, their reverence for Zuhayr reached the heavens. The sheikh stepped into the midst of the crowd and spoke with a powerful voice. "O people, Zuhayr has performed such a deed that all the gold in the world could not purchase his pure heart. He did not betray his trust. I say that to such an honest and honorable young man, we should give this orphan Jamila as a wife. He will protect both this girl and this treasure as his own life." Zuhayr turned crimson with modesty and bowed his head. "I did this for the sake of God, not for marriage or money. Let my intentions not be tainted. I seek no reward," he said. But the elderly woman and Jamila were so moved by Zuhayr's noble character that they desired the marriage with all their hearts.
When the sorrow in Jamila's eyes met Zuhayr's honest gaze, the seeds of a pure and blessed love were sown in both their hearts. A few days later, a simple wedding was held in the village, one filled with joy and the heartfelt prayers of all. Zuhayr and Jamila left those days of poverty behind, and, with the lawful inheritance bestowed upon them by God, they embarked upon a new life. Yet they did not squander that gold on luxury or ostentation. Instead, they opened a grand grain store in the heart of the village. They sourced wheat and barley from the surrounding hamlets and sold them with such integrity that they never once cheated the scales. Since everyone knew Zuhayr to be a merchant of unwavering reliability, they sought him out for all their needs. Jamila, with her ever-present smile, would secretly aid the poor and the destitute, never turning a soul away empty-handed. In time, their business flourished so greatly and became so abundant with blessings that Zuhayr, who once longed for but a single sheep, became the most prosperous and respected merchant in the land. Yet his heart remained that of the humble youth from the desert. They distributed a vast portion of their earnings to orphans, widows, and the needy. In their quiet, tranquil home, God blessed them with virtuous and healthy children. Every night, as their house echoed with the laughter of those children, Zuhayr would turn to his wife and say the same thing. On that day in the desert, it was not gold we found, but this eternal abundance and the secret of the sacred trust. Whoever seeks refuge in God and does not betray what is entrusted to them, God shall open for them doors of sustenance from places they never expected and could never imagine. And so, that arduous journey which began with a single sheep endured as the most beautiful and unforgettable epic of righteousness, patience, and loyalty to one's word, passed down in that village from tongue to tongue and heart to heart for generations to come.